Hi, it's me again, back with another video. Before I begin this journey back in time, I would like to explain that this analysis is not final. The series is still ongoing, and rewatching and reanalyzing is definitely worth it. The series now sits in my brain rent-free, along with One Piece and other memorable diamond material, which you will see the eventual importance of mentioning in the future. This video series is, in no way, a critique or analysis of the plot. It solely focuses on characters, but I do see that there may be reasons for mentioning the plot sometimes. This script was crafted while I was down with the flu, on some really weird cold medicine, and feeling absolutely crap. I mean, we could never talk about link click unless we're traumatized on something, or both. Aside from the joke, though the cold medicine was not really a joke, I wanted to talk about link click because I love it, and it has become so much more than just two bros fixing up the regrets of clients through hopping into photos. So, with the return of link click in the form of the Bryden arc, I would like to kickstart a series where I analyze characters from link click, starting with none other than Cheng Xiaoshi. The first impression we get from Cheng Xiaoshi is that he is carefree, outgoing, and happy-go-lucky. Within the first few dialogues of Season 1, Episode 1, we learn that the main cast is staying at a studio, currently owned by Qiaoling's parents, and that Cheng Xiaoshi is staying over indefinitely at said studio. The exposition raises many questions the first time we are introduced to this character. Why is Cheng Xiaoshi living with Qiaoling? What is his relationship with Qiaoling and Lu Guang? Why did he say he would rather hang himself than leave the photo studio? And most importantly, what is so important about him as one of the series' protagonists? We were first introduced to the superpower premise reasonably quickly into the episode when Lu Guang just peers into the photo like it is nothing, but it did serve as a good exposition, thus kickstarting the whole superpower concept in this world. We don't know how that ties into Cheng Xiaoshi until a scene later, in which we, as the audience, were given the exposition that Cheng Xiaoshi and Lu Guang both have powers, and are working together in this photo studio to complete small quests given by Qiaoling or clients who walked into the studio with their requests. The whole premise is wholesome in later episodes, but we were first introduced to the case of Emma, and Emma's case became the center of attention in Season 1. However, as I said before, I am not as interested in the plot development. I am more interested in how the story explains Cheng Xiaoshi's personality and how that blends well with his powers. During the interaction between Lu Guang and Cheng Xiaoshi, who possesses Emma's body, Cheng Xiaoshi started feeling the similar emotions of loneliness that Emma felt when she left her parents to move to a bigger city for work, or that's how I interpreted that scene because it was not specified verbally. The imagery of that specific scene turned from Emma in her child form into Cheng Xiaoshi in his child form, symbolizing artistically that he deeply empathized with her emotions and past. And that is the first clue that we, the audience, get to his insecurities and his past. Lu Guang then dismisses in classic Lu Guang fashion, which I'll be making a future video on this man alone because there's so much mystery and speculation it is worth one video to talk about, that it's Cheng Xiaoshi's powers that allowed him to feel similar emotions to Emma. But I couldn't help but think there's much more to it than what Lu Guang explained it to be. After that emotional understanding, Cheng Xiaoshi decided not to listen to Lu Guang's instructions and impulsively texted Emma's parents, using Emma's body. This indirectly caused Emma's death, but the most important fact in this case and the plot is that Cheng Xiaoshi can not only be very emotionally charged with his impulsive actions, but also has great empathetic skills, decisiveness, and sharp emotional understanding when interacting with people. Kind of like your average shonen protagonist, but toned down to a more realistic, well, as realistic as a supernatural donghua can be, person. The empathetic skill itself isn't bad, but when paired with impulsivity, it does pose a more significant problem. Cheng Xiaoshi's powers are actually quite overpowering, as I have explained in previous videos on the link-click timeline theory through a set of live demonstrations. Please go check it out. I want to emphasize that impulsive actions with a lack of control would mean a total failure to take responsibility for said actions that haven't been thought of well enough. With great power comes great responsibility is not out of nowhere. This means that if Cheng Xiaoshi impulsively changes some events in the past, it can perhaps shift and create an entirely new outcome, while also changing the course of the timeline and messing with his perception of himself and the world around him entirely. This problem is especially prominent when Cheng Xiaoshi is in Cheng Xiao's body and tries to warn the people in the area of the earthquake that is about to come. His impulsivity seems to reveal itself the most when in situations where he feels cornered and helpless. He wanted to do something to change the tragedies he was about to witness, so he acted through instinct and not carefully thinking things through. However, from here, we can see something much deeper than what is shown on the surface by connecting this event to Emma's case. Cheng Xiaoshi fears abandonment and being alone. Now, why would I say that? Why would I word this observation as fear and not dislike? It's because there is something unsettling in the mix. Simple dislikes will not be so emotionally charged. If you simply dislike broccoli, you would simply not eat it. When it comes to the concept of fear, you are experiencing this emotion with deep insecurities. If you fear bats, you wouldn't simply wave the bats away. You would run away from them, tremble at their presence, maybe sweat and hyperventilate, even go as far to have a panic attack due to bats. Fear is different from dislikes and may be rooted in past trauma. This is how I tackled this observation. It is trauma that got Cheng Xiaoshi to act this way. Cheng Xiaoshi reacted quite violently against Lu Guang after learning the truth about the past, and came back visibly distressed. He didn't think of his actions and went straight to releasing his anger, frustration, fear, and hopelessness. Arguably, this could be due to how Lu Guang deceives him at the start by not giving him the full picture, which I will talk about why Lu Guang does this kind of thing in his own video. But I would also want to link this to Cheng Xiaoshi's past, as this insecurity and uncertainty that he experienced and still experiences in the present stemmed from him having missing parents who never came back to see him when he was a child growing up. They still haven't seen him, by the way. Literal deadbeat parents who need Cheng Xiaoshi to go find them himself. Like, what the flip is wrong with you? Please take care of your son, please? But, like I said before, Cheng Xiaoshi's insecurities are rooted in his lack of love and attention from his parents. It might sound like I'm judging him with the lack of love and attention to be twisted as he begs for attention from others, but it's definitely not true. Neglect is real child abuse. By not giving the child enough love and attention, it could potentially cause the child to feel extremely unsafe and insecure due to the lack of support and security the parents give to the child. There are multiple animal studies done on mice to demonstrate the parent's role in a child's life and the development of the child with or without their parents. And the results for mice who grew up without parents tend to be more distant and lack social groups due to their inability to form support systems on their own. They are also more likely to be insecure about their surroundings and more hypervigilant. In the case of humans, emotional regulations may be untrained due to the unsafe environment they live in. This can mean emotional outbursts in pressured situations and being more emotionally sensitive. Oh wait, didn't I say Cheng Xiaoshi is quite perceptive about emotions? Yeah, it's Probably because he feels unsafe due to this lack of love and protection from his parents, so he had to train himself to understand others' emotions via observation, which is why he is very emotionally perceptive, or really sensitive. It's really the happy and cheerful ones that have the deepest insecurities they're hiding, huh? Now, some of you might be thinking, Cheng Xiaoshi has friends. He seems to be a very extroverted person and loves socializing. That is completely different from what you described with the observations of the mice family. First, good job. You actually listened. And second, you're right. Because mice are not humans. And you can see this sort of interactions and observations. They have simpler behaviors and thus are easier to observe and record. Human minds are more complicated than mice. Cheng Xiaoshi may have many different social groups, but that doesn't mean he has a stable and secure support system around him, or at least people he decided he could trust with his personal troubles. The people he should be relying on abandoned him without a word, left without a clue, and he struggled to speak about himself to others who he considered as outsiders. Would you speak about your insecurities and fear to someone on the streets? To a friend of a friend? No, because they are complete strangers to you, and you can't trust them because of your vulnerability. That discussion should be done in a family, which Cheng Xiaoshi doesn't have. This is why, no matter what Qiaoling does, Cheng Xiaoshi will never open up to her about his insecurities, and Qiaoling doesn't do the same. They are friends, but that's that. They are not family, even when Qiaoling becomes Cheng Xiaoshi's mother-sister figure. There is this fundamental wall between these two, and you can see it during the flashback Cheng Xiaoshi had during the earthquake episode, where Qiaoling tries to comfort Cheng Xiaoshi as children. Qiaoling could never empathize with what Cheng Xiaoshi was experiencing, because Qiaoling had a family herself, and Cheng Xiaoshi was never really a part of it. Cheng Xiaoshi also wanted to wait for his family's return to chase that past he couldn't have. Now, we all know that Cheng Xiaoshi is insecure due to not having parents, but we don't know what type of insecurities he has. However, this isn't really a problem if you consider us, as the audience, to have information and omnipotence that the characters in the show don't have. Lu Guang and Qiaoling may not know of Cheng Xiaoshi's past, but we can infer that past and interpret the insecurities that may come with that past. You may agree or disagree with my interpretations, but here is how I see Cheng Xiaoshi. Let's set this scene up. Cheng Xiaoshi is insecure because he doesn't have a support system. Having parents is something that is the societal norm, but Cheng Xiaoshi doesn't fit that norm because his parents abandoned him. Being the odd one out, so to speak, comes with not conforming with societal expectations, which brings isolation and shame to oneself, as the general culture and understanding is more collectivist, meaning it is best to just fit in rather than being that odd one out. In retrospect, Cheng Xiaoshi craved that feeling of fitting in, and as a kid, he would run into walls of constant frustration because he felt that he had lost that part of childhood that he deserved. He would, obviously, want to find his parents as quickly as he can, which is difficult considering his age as a child. You could only imagine that he would be able to find his parents when he is a lot older, which is what gives this rush feeling through his impulsivity. He isn't just impulsive, he thinks he is running out of time, and therefore a lot of his actions were determined by his rushed decisions, which is unhealthy over time since some decisions require long-term thinking. Logic seems to be thrown out of the way when it comes to actions related to lives that he cared about, but the underlying sense of loss and abandonment seems to pursue its way throughout his entire life. So yes, he isn't just carefree. He is using that carefree mask to hide the anxiety he has with abandonment. That isn't his only insecurity. He has two, in fact, and one of them is what I mentioned above. The other is reminiscence. Cheng Xiaoshi, as a child, would think back, like in the flashback to his childhood with his mother patting him down to sleep while singing a lullaby, to his happy childhood in the past and wanting to go back to that past to stay there. It isn't as though he is trapped in the past, he just wishes that the past had stayed longer. This is important to note that trapped in the past and staying in the past are different. Trapped has negative connotations and could be interpreted as maladaptive, but staying is more of a mild description of what reminiscence is, meaning there is still hope for a person to walk out of the past's shadow, which Cheng Xiaoshi did with the help of Qiaoling. And that is why support systems matter. Not having Qiaoling in Cheng Xiaoshi's life and having Qiaoling in Cheng Xiaoshi's life plays a significant factor in how Cheng Xiaoshi develops. Qiaoling acts as one of the people in the support system Cheng Xiaoshi is supposed to have. She was there when Cheng Xiaoshi was distressed, she was there when Cheng Xiaoshi was missing his parents, and she is there with Cheng Xiaoshi most of the time, not because they are friends, but because there's something more. And that was shown in Bridal Arc, which we will talk about later. Qiaoling is one of the people Cheng Xiaoshi trusts with some of his insecurities, and that specific insecurity is the second one mentioned, always looking back at the past. Abandoned children often internalize their emotions of guilt and frustration, pointing fingers at themselves for being the ultimate problem and cause of their parents' abandonment. Cheng Xiaoshi, as a child, could have doubted his existence and considered himself to be a mistake. Qiaoling's existence in his support system prevents that type of thinking. By giving Cheng Xiaoshi worth on equal terms with her, Cheng Xiaoshi believes himself of that guilt and frustration, which stops that internalized cycle from getting worse. This helped Cheng Xiaoshi's development, as he is quite confident with himself and very much willing to express his worth and standpoint in relationships. He has firm boundaries, is confident in his manners, and has grown up to be an outgoing person. We can thank Qiaoling for that. What about his other insecurity? Cheng Xiaoshi often rushes his decisions, which causes him to perform questionable actions and come to questionable conclusions. Lu Guang is actually the other person who helped with that part of Cheng Xiaoshi, who very much needed that wall of support. Lu Guang gives Cheng Xiaoshi the time and guidance to think things through, slow things down, and organize his thoughts and actions, as Lu Guang is very much basing everything on logic. And this is very important for Lu Guang's character, which we will talk about in a later video for him. You can say that Lu Guang became the external cycle of logic that activates whenever Cheng Xiaoshi seems to be agitated. In the wise words of director Li, Lu Guang is Cheng Xiaoshi's therapist. And he would be right. Cheng Xiaoshi's therapist is definitely Lu Guang, who guides Cheng Xiaoshi through stressful times by providing a route of reasoning and analysis for his struggles, which is what therapists do, an occupation that organizes and places seemingly irrational decisions with reasoning. We will talk about why Lu Guang needs therapy urgently later, as that would essentially be what his entire video's content is. Please, get some help. And that doesn't mean Cheng Xiaoshi doesn't need therapy because of Qiaoling and Lu Guang's support. He does, and there are still some unresolved issues that he has to sort out himself with guidance from professionals. Friends are ultimately friends, and this hole of loss and abandonment from Cheng Xiaoshi's parents cannot be completely healed through friendship. It has to be the family itself. Lu Guang and Qiaoling did a great job of creating a safe space for Cheng Xiaoshi to be more open about himself, and Cheng Xiaoshi definitely appreciated that. And that is something that Cheng Xiaoshi is really good at. His willingness to communicate his feelings with people he trusts. This is partially because he was forced to find connections he can trust, and partially because of Qiaoling's guidance and support, which gave him that trust to act like he does now. He isn't really childish. He just wants to have that space for him to show that inner child he never got to release. You can see that he puts walls after walls for people who aren't close, yet is willing to unravel these walls for people who are close enough. He cries and gets vulnerable with Qiaoling and Lu Guang because he knows he can do that and won't be persecuted by any comments they make. He knows for certain that these two friends will have his back, and he is willing to talk to them when he needs them. This effective communication is seen especially clearly when Cheng Xiaoshi crafts the plan to capture the culprit behind the death of victims at the end of Season 1, or the possessed Liu Ming. Cheng Xiaoshi and Lu Guang tag-teamed and absolutely crushed the execution of the plan they made, and the scene showcased what it is like for them to have effective communication. Communicating and actually creating a plan strengthens the trust between these two, and thus allowing them to create this internal connection as if they are soulmates. You can even see that trust in Season 2, where Cheng Xiaoshi handles his powers with much more care and consideration than how he uses it in Season 1. Cheng Xiaoshi always believes Lu Guang would have his back, and he wants Lu Guang to do the same in Season 2. Whether Lu Guang trusts Cheng Xiaoshi is a different story, but through Cheng Xiaoshi's perspective, he trusts Lu Guang and thinks Lu Guang as a person similar to him. See, on the surface, it may look like Lu Guang and Cheng Xiaoshi are on the opposite sides of a spectrum, but they actually act pretty similarly. This may also be the reason why Cheng Xiaoshi puts in a lot of trust in Lu Guang, as they function similarly. Cheng Xiaoshi and Lu Guang both tend to put up barriers to defend their vulnerable selves. It's only the way they hide them that are different. Cheng Xiaoshi builds this extroverted and energetic persona, whereas Lu Guang hides his vulnerability under layers of skepticism and distrust, creating distance between him and others. In comparison to Lu Guang, Cheng Xiaoshi seems to be more open about his feelings, which could be interpreted as him being more of an expert at socializing than Lu Guang is, or their coping mechanisms are completely different. Cheng Xiaoshi has Qiaoling and Lu Guang, and to him, that is already plenty. When you are on the verge of collapsing, it just takes one person to save that collapsing soul. And it takes a while, but Cheng Xiaoshi recognizes that Qiaoling and Lu Guang can help him, which is why he entrusts his vulnerability to them. Maybe more to Lu Guang than Qiaoling, since Cheng Xiaoshi believes Lu Guang is similar to him. See, I told y'all this series isn't just about pain and suffering. It literally gives you examples of how to maintain a healthy relationship by giving you the good and bad examples. I think Cheng Xiaoshi also recognizes that his strength is communication. He speaks up about his struggles to those he trusts, and won't hesitate to ask if those he cared about need help. This is especially true during the earthquake episode and also the accidental picture dive in Bride and Arc. He wouldn't hesitate to try communicating his struggles, even though this is super hard to do sometimes. Believe me, if you ever experience something distressing or traumatic, it is hard to word it. Take Lu Guang as an example. You can say that this is an extroverted trait, but I also believe the environment plays a big role in this. Being a child with no relatives or family, you are forced to find safety on your own, so there will be outcomes where you shut down to protect yourself, Lu Guang, and outcomes where you open up to strangers in hopes of finding that safety for them. Having to take that first step with Xiaoling gave him an idea of a safe environment, which gave him that opportunity to create a safe space for himself, eventually expanding that circle little by little until he has a social network of friends in different degrees of trust and closeness. That's why having friends is important, guys. Not only do you learn from them, the good ones will protect you and actually help you. You gotta tell them and trust them for things to work out. So yes, Cheng Xiaoshi isn't just your average sunshine shonen boy, he is actually emotionally perceptive and sensitive, sometimes impulsive when having heightened emotions, and very empathetic with his approaches to understanding people. He is a good person, a really good person. With that, I don't know what to say any further, so thank you for watching. I was expecting this to take a very long time, but it took a very long time indeed. There is just something about Cheng Xiaoshi's character that felt really colourful and real to me that I just couldn't help but be drawn to him, root for him, and then like him. I guess it could be the power of shonen, but it could also be I like my men dead or traumatized, so both. Anyway, if you have any thoughts on Cheng Xiaoshi, any thoughts on Link Click in general, or any questions regarding the character, you can comment down below. I love listening to your ideas and engaging in conversations and analysis, because if you watch this video till the end, I know you love Link Click as much as I do. Thank you for all the support. I will see you guys in the next video I make, which I don't know is when, but we'll see. Bye! Hi, it's editing me here. I didn't mention in the script how and why it took that long for me to get the video out, produce it basically. There were a lot of things happening in the background. I have school, believe it or not. I am a college student, a full-time college student. I take biomedicine as the course. That's a very hard subject. I also got into therapy, so there's that. And trying to survive in a country that you have never been to was something else, you know, entirely. These things are happening in the background, and it's really hard to manage that while also outputting this video. The recording and the editing process takes a really long time, so I appreciate all of your patience waiting this video to come out. And I get it, you probably forgot that this is an existing thing anyway, so yeah. Thank you for your support, and as always, like, stay tuned to the next one. I am writing Lu Guang's analysis currently, and by the time the video gets out, hopefully I have some form of structure with Lu Guang's analysis, and yeah, so I hope you guys like this video, and see you guys in the next one. Bye!